Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How y'all doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today we're doing a video that I've done before on my channel titled, as you see in the title, if I could only keep one palette from each of the brands in my collection, which one would I choose? This really might not be about my favorite palette in each one of those brands, even though that seems like counterproductive, right? These aren't necessarily my favorite palettes, but when I do this, I do open up the palettes from each brand and the palettes that I'm currently looking at to keep in my collection to see like what I need in my collection. I mean, I'm obviously not going to pick my least favorite palette in those brands to keep, but I'm also maybe not talking about my most favorite. This is a video that I have done on my channel most recently in June of 2024, so just over a year ago. I like doing these sporadically, these kind of videos sporadically on my channel because our preferences change year to year. We're also using the palettes in our collection more every single year. So maybe we've decided that, you know, the formula has gone bad, or like we don't like it quite as much as we thought we did when we first brought it into our collection, those kind of things. It's also interesting to go back to the year before or the year before that and see which brands were actually in this roundup and which ones weren't that I am adding in this year. And also to see if the palettes that I liked last year are the same palettes that I like this year. I mean, ultimately, as I said, our taste changed. So I would think that some of them might be the same, but some of them aren't going to be the same, right? So I do have several new brands that I'm bringing into this video this year that it wasn't in the running last year. So I'm really interested in sharing those things with you guys, and I hope that you're just interested in watching because it's going to be a super fun video. There's a lot of palettes to talk about. That said, that is what we're doing today. I hope that you guys are here for it. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high and colorful beauty and self-care. Ultimately, this is my self-care. I really like coming out here talking to you about the good, the bad, the ugly, all things about the beauty products that are in my collection here. And it's more about getting utilization of the things that are in my collection. I don't do a whole lot of hauls here on this channel. Maybe monthly I'm doing a haul, but I am on a no buy this year also, so I'm not purchasing any new makeup coming into my collection. I have had a couple of points purchases and some friend mail, but other than that, I'm not purchasing anything. So it's all about creating videos about the stuff that's already in my collection. So I hope that you're here for it. I hope that you'll want to subscribe before you go. I'm kind of a kick in the pants to hang out with. I want to welcome you in. Let me know down in the comment section if you do that. And with that said, let's roll into this video where we are looking at the one palette from every brand in my collection that I would keep if I had to choose. So I have 24 different brands in my collection that have 3 or more palettes in them. And the rules, in case I didn't say it at the beginning in the intro of the video, the rules are I have to have at least 3 palettes in each one of those brands' collections. And I also have to have used at least 3 of those. I do have 24 brands, so I have 24 palettes to talk to you about today. We all know me, I do like to chat. Hopefully I'm not going to talk a whole lot about these palettes, just enough to tell you the why behind it. That said, I do have a palette review on every single one of these palettes that I am going to be talking to you about today. Those palette reviews are all in my palette roulette series. That series is linked down in my description box as a playlist to watch. So you're more than welcome to go there. I can't link every single one of them in the cards, but I will link some of them up in the cards. And with that said, just let you know that that whole playlist is down in the description box. It's linked in there, and the videos are pretty clearly marked, so you should be able to find them really quick. I will also tell you there was probably 4 or 5 brands that I had a really hard time choosing the one that I would keep from said brand. I try to look at the brand as a whole and its collection that's within my collection. And then I also will open up each one of those palettes and look at also what I'm already brought into the one palette that I would keep. So this isn't necessarily about my favorite palette from this brand. It's about what makes the most sense for the palette collection that I am bringing in as a whole. So that said, let's start with, in no particular order, I'm just going to go off what is in my pile because what is on my paper is in a completely different order. I'm going to start with the Ace Beaute palette that I have. So I do have 3 palettes from Ace Beaute. I did have 5 at one point in time, but one went bad and I decluttered. One went bad as in it's got mold all over it, and the other one I decluttered. So I'm currently sitting at 3 palettes in this collection. The one that I chose to keep from that collection is the Ace Beaute Blossom Passion palette. The reason why I've kept this palette is because of the palettes that I have in the Ace Beaute collection still, this one makes the most sense for me to keep. I do love a pink eye look. I think that this created some really beautiful pink eyeshadow colors. I also love that it's mostly mattes. There's literally only 3 shimmers in this palette, and I think that they're really beautiful shimmers, but I love the mattes in this palette. Now this is the old formula, so the new formula might look completely different than this one, might perform completely different than this one, but that is the one that I chose to keep from Ace Beaute. From ABH, I do have the Jackie Aina palette. This is my favorite palette from ABH. I think I said that in the ranking video that I did on ABH, which I can link up in the cards for you since I'm not putting these reviews up in the cards. This is a beautiful eyeshadow palette. I love that we have like a really neutral 6-pan over here that you can get some really beautiful neutral eyeshadows with. I love that we have kind of this pinky end over here that you can get some really beautiful colorful pinky eye looks from with this crazy beautiful deep purple. I love that we have a deep purple matte also. I don't think these 2 colors of purple necessarily go together, but I do think like it rounds this palette out well. I love all the shimmers in this palette. I love all the mattes in this palette. I do wish it had like maybe one more colorful matte because this is also a shimmer. It is very shimmer heavy for a palette, which I don't typically like, as it does have one more shimmer than it does matte, but I do love this palette. It is one of my favorites. It is my favorite by ABH. That is what I said in the ranking video, so I would have to keep this one. It just makes the most sense for what I have going on in this collection. From Blend Bunny, I did pick Lunar, and I picked Lunar because of this beautiful color story. Like, I love jewel tones, and this is like the epitome of summertime eyeshadow palette, in my humble opinion. I don't love the Blend Bunny formula for shimmers, but these shimmers are all really, really gorgeous. I love their mattes, and I love the fact that this has a really like pretty basic row of neutral tones, right? Leaning very cool, but everyday eye look kind of tones and these crazy pops of color. I think that you can get so many different eye looks out of here. You can mix and match the colors or just go straight up and down the rows. It's what I like best about Blend Bunny, but that is the palette that I decided to keep from them. From Violet Voss, I did choose the Flamingo palette as the one that I would choose. I went back and forth between this one and Like a Boss, because Like a Boss is also one of my favorites from them. But ultimately it came down to color story. Like a Boss has got a really beautiful kind of neutral grungy color story, and I just really think that this brought in a lot more colorful, and I'm very colorful, right? I sway very colorful in terms of eye looks. This brought in a different dynamic into the colorful eyeshadows that I kind of brought in to this like collection of 1 palette each that I didn't have, that Like a Boss didn't provide for the neutrals that I would have been bringing into this. Speaking of like everyday eyeshadow palette or neutral color stories, this is a pretty neutral color story for me. From Juvia's Place, I did pick the Nomad. The Nomad is very grungy, kind of green and yellow and brown, like poopy colors, but it is one of my favorite palettes by Juvia's Place. I really just love it so much. And of the shadows, there's only 2 of them that are shimmers in this palette, and I like that because I'm not the biggest fan of Juvia's Place shimmers. Like, they're good, don't get me wrong, but they're super heavy on the eye, and I just don't feel like they do my aging eyes any favors because they're so like dense. But these 2 shimmers are really very pretty on an eye look, and buff out really very well. I love that it's got the grungy nature of colors in it. I don't love that it has two yellows because these two yellows honestly look very similar on an eye look, but I can hang with that. It is a very pretty eyeshadow palette and would be like what I would determine everyday eyeshadow palette use. From Urban Decay, I would bring in Moondust. Probably not the most practical of the palettes that I have from Urban Decay. I would say probably Born to Run is the most practical that I have from Urban Decay, but this one is honestly my favorite from Urban Decay because it is just the beautiful shimmery Moondust eyeshadow formula that is just so toppery and beautiful. And excuse, these swatches are from another video, but so toppery and beautiful. It's got a little bit of a greenish hue to the base of it, but it's got like purple shimmers on it. It's just so pretty, and I don't ever want to be without. I bought that on a whim from TJ Maxx, not knowing anything about the Moondust shadows when I purchased it. And I'm so excited that I have this and have since went on to purchase Moondust singles because they're just phenomenal. From Lunar Beauty, I did pick Moonspell. The reason why I picked Moonspell is because it, again, is one of those shadow palettes that I feel like is a beautiful palette, number one, but I also feel like is a beautiful palette for like everyday use for me. Like this is a hard palette to show. I would use this row of colors and almost every color in this row of colors as an everyday eye look if I had to wear a very subdued eye to work. But other than that, like I'll use every single shade in this eyeshadow palette, and I love this eyeshadow palette so much. It's the perfect color story for a color lover that needs some neutral eyeshadows in their collection, but it's also, in my humble opinion, the perfect color story for a neutral lover that wants some color in their eyeshadow palettes, because purple is also like, I'm totally a hashtag purple is a crease color kind of girl. Maybe you're not. Pink is also a crease color kind of girl. That's the kind of person that I am. Maybe you're not, but these are also really easy colors for, I mean, I don't think that when people think of color as can't wear this kind of color to work, I don't think that purple is one of those colors. Correct me if I'm wrong. Blues and greens, yes. Purples and pinks, I think a lot of people still can get away with purples and pinks in an office job that they need to not wear purple eyeshadow to. I mean, I've seen teachers wear purple. I've seen, you know, dental hygienists wear purple. I think that purple is just not that kind of color that people steer away from. So I do feel like that's a really great, like, neutral, everyday, appropriate kind of eyeshadow palette that I would need to keep in my collection. In addition to, that's one of my favorites. From Tarte, I do have the Tarteist Pro palette. This was the first Tarte palette that I ever owned, or that I ever owned that I paid for, I do believe. And I love that it is mostly matte. There's only 4 shimmers in here. These 4 shimmers are beautiful shimmers and go with everything. They're really great as far as the shimmer formula. I love Tarte's matte formula. I think that their matte formula is the easiest matte formula to use. I do have 5 palettes by Tarte, and this just seemed like the best in terms of bringing in a palette, because it is my everyday neutral eyeshadow palette that I could go to that is in the box eyeshadow neutrals. From Viseart, I did bring in the Viseart Dark Mattes. This is my favorite eyeshadow palette from Viseart, so I could not bring this palette in. I love that there's 2 tones of each one of the shades in here, and those 2 tones are very pigmented and really do perform beautifully. I think that the 2 purples and the 2 blues are not nearly as different as I would love for them to be in this little 12-pan eyeshadow palette. But Viseart does have a beautiful matte formula that is just so good and so nice to work with. And I feel like for the palettes that I have, if I was struggling with, you know, pigmentation or color performance of any of the eyeshadows that I brought in to use on my eyes in all of the palettes that I have, these dark mattes are dark mattes that you're not seeing very much in the collection of palettes that I have, but they are also a formulation of matte that I know would help fix any of the mattes that I have brought in to this if I could only keep one from each collection. From Melt, I do have the Melt Smoke Sessions 2. Listen, I have a ton of palettes from Melt, and I love every single one of them. And I wouldn't necessarily say the Melt Smoke Sessions 2 is one of my favorites, but these purple shimmers in this palette, we are unworthy of these purple eyeshadows. I feel like, in my humble opinion, they are just so pretty, so backlit, so impactful, and I would not want them to not be in my collection. When I thought about my Melt palettes, like, this is one that I really kind of struggled with because I have so many matte palettes that are Melt palettes that I really, really love. I really love Muerte. I really love Smoke Sessions 1. I really love Gemini and Gemini 2. This one is the most iconic in my mind from the Melt collection that I have. So had to pull that one in. From Huda, this isn't my, if I had to rank my Huda, and I think I have ranked my Huda, I'll stick that video up in the cards too. I do not believe that this was my number one. My number one, I do believe, was Pretty Grunge. But this one would be the one that I kept, and this is Mercury Retrograde. And I think just opening it up and looking at the color story, like, anybody should know why. These two shimmers right here, I would venture to say even this third one, right? So these three right here, favorite shimmers in my Huda collection, hands down. Potentially favorite shimmers in my everyday collection, hands down. I would even say this one's a really beautiful shimmer. This one's like, just the shimmers in this palette make me drool every single time I think about using this palette. They're just so pretty. So I had to bring this one in because I feel like it creates a level of uniqueness that I'm not getting with any of the other palettes that I am protecting in this if I could only keep one. From Too Faced, I have the Natural Nudes palette. I mean, I couldn't not put this in my collection here. This is my favorite palette by Too Faced. I really just love this palette for an everyday eye look. It's a one and done, two and done kind of eyeshadow palette. I think it's built really well. I think the formulation of it is really nice. And for an overall, like, needs a brown and brown alone kind of eyeshadow palette, I think that this one is it. There is a level of pinkiness in this too that I could dip into if I needed to. Like, I just feel like this is a great palette to have, from light to deep, from white to brown, and a little bit in between from an everyday eye look kind of perspective. If I did not want to, like, struggle to put an eye look together, this is probably the palette that I would pull in for an everyday eye look. That is an easy palette to use. From Natasha Denona, this one was, again, hard for me because I truly do not have a Natasha Denona palette that I really dislike. It's been really hard for me to, I want to do a ranking on Natasha Denona. It's been years since I've done one of those, and I have so many more palettes now, and it's just been really hard for me to pull together a ranking because I really don't have a Natasha Denona palette that I don't like. I do have Natasha Denona palettes that I don't use as much as others because of the color story of them. So that's kind of where I'm going from, like, a ranking perspective. But if I had to pick the one that I would want to bring in that sets itself apart from any of the other palettes that I'm bringing into this, or any of the other palettes within its own Natasha Denona collection, it would have to be Retro. This is one of my favorite palettes from Natasha Denona, hands down. I love the pinks in here. I love the, like, deep burgundies in here. I love the shimmers in this palette. I love that it's not super warm tone, even though it's really kind of pink, right? Or purpley burgundy. I really just love this palette, and there has not ever been one time that I've pulled this palette out that I've hated the eye look that I create with it. There also has not been one time that I've worked with this palette that I feel like one or the other of the shades did me dirty. It's also got a really great matte to shimmer ratio in it. There's only 6 shimmers in this entire palette. The rest of them are mattes. I just feel like it's such a beautiful palette. And while the like Ace Beaute one was really, really pink, this one leans a little bit more mauve purple, and I really love a beautiful mauve eye look, so I had to bring that one in. The Norvina collection from ABH is in a completely different section for me in terms of my eyeshadow palette, so I did an ABH ranking, which I linked up in the cards earlier. I have not done a Norvina ABH ranking. Pretend like they're a totally different brand in terms of my palette collection. If I were to keep one from that collection, it would be this one. It's always been this one. If I'm honest with you, I don't think this one has ever changed. And it's simply because I really, really love fall in a nutshell. Like, it is my favorite season. I would say summer and fall are my favorite seasons. And this palette is just fall in a nutshell. It is so pretty. All of the shades of orange in here are so pretty. All of the shades of brown in here are so pretty. It's got like little snippets of like some of my favorite colors and color stories in this palette also, and it's just a palette that I have an easy time using. I think that when it comes to the other 2 big ones that I have like this, like the blue one, I have number 1, number 2, and number 3 of the big ones, and the same in the minis, 1, 2, and 3 in the minis. This one is just the easiest of the 3 to use, if I'm on it, or easiest of the 6 to use, if I'm honest with you. You can create so many different multi-dimensional, beautiful eye looks out of this palette. Beautiful, impactful, gorgeous eye looks out of this palette, and that is why I continue to choose this one, in addition to the fact that fall is my favorite time of year. And this is the epitome of summer or sweater weather to me. It's the first palette I think of when I think of fall, which is really hard to do a like fall palette lineup, right, without including it every single time. But I mean, sometimes just something's got to give, I guess, and that's it. When I think of Pat McGrath, this one was also very hard for me because I have 10 palettes from Pat McGrath, and my favorites are the most recent ones that I've used. I really, really like Petalmorphosis. I think I mentioned in that video it's probably my favorite to date of the Pat McGrath palettes that I've used, but I also said that about this one, which is the Midnight Sun palette, which is ultimately the one that I chose, but I also like Utopian Dream. So like, I have quite a few from Pat McGrath, so I had them all laid out, all open, and I'm really just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with them, trying to figure out which one to choose. Ultimately, as I said, I picked Midnight Sun, and I mean, it really just comes down to the fact that this is a really beautiful fall toned eyeshadow palette, and I do think that you get, you know, quite a different kind of color story from this than you get from any of the other like neutral ones that I've pulled in. This is a lot less grungy than Nomad, while also being deep and dark and a little bit more moody than Natural Nudes, right? And it is fall while also being like a subdued fall, unlike ABH Norvina Collection Volume 3. But then you also throw in these beautiful shimmers, and these are some of my favorite of her special shades. They're just so pretty. I mean, this Periwinkle is probably one of my favorites in my whole collection. It is so pretty. Now, when it comes to the one that I would declutter, which is another video that I will be doing that you guys will see to, you know, counteract this one, I don't know which one to pick from Pat McGrath. Just like I don't know which one to pick from Natasha Denona. It's going to be probably about color story. From Cosmic Brushes, which is not a palette that I had in my collection last year that I had used that was in this, I picked Muse. Serenity was the reason why I picked up from Cosmic Brushes, but this palette I think truly stole my heart because there was enough green in it to fulfill my love for green eyeshadows, There was enough neutral in it to make me feel like I could use this every day if I was needing an everyday eyeshadow palette or needed to recommend an everyday eyeshadow palette with a pop of color. This would also be a palette that would be, I feel like, a neutral color lover's color palette while also being a color lover's neutral palette, because I think it kind of teeters on that fine line. I love that it's got a little bit of pinkiness in it. I love that it's got a little bit of grunginess in it. I love that we have like this kind of brown red here. This is more of like an eggplanty purple, but it's so deep that you could build it into a look as a black, depending on what color you're placing it with. I had a lot more fun with this palette than I did with Serenity, and also didn't get bored with this palette like I did with Undergrowth. And it's more approachable than Winter Wonderland. So I still have one more palette to use by Cosmic Brushes, and I do think that that palette very well could end up being my favorite by Cosmic Brushes. It's the Cool Trolls palette, but for now that is the one that I would choose to keep from Cosmic Brushes. And from Ensley Reign, I have 3 palettes from Ensley Reign exactly. Have used now every single eyeshadow in my Groovy Garden palette, but that's the last palette that I'll have to review from them, and that palette review won't be up until after this video goes up for sure. This is a palette that shocked me. It was a palette that I wasn't even going to pick up. It's a palette that I was like, why would anybody want this palette? Like, this is a beautiful color story. First and foremost, it's very fairy and whimsical and all the things that you think of when you see the outer cartridge of the box. The pastels are not so white based that they just kind of fall off your eye or blend away, and they are the perfect companions to the deeper jewel tones in this palette. I love that you can pop these shadows out and put them into a build your own palette. I love that there was only one of the special shades in this palette that really bothered my eyes, and it's this one. And even then, if I was using a glitter glue, it didn't really go anywhere, so then it didn't bother my eyes. I just love that it is set up in a way that there is a matte, a shimmer, a matte, a shimmer as you go along the lines. So the ratio of mattes to shimmers is perfection in my humble opinion. This navy blue is probably, all these deep colors are probably the best of those deep colors that I have in my collection. And I could not imagine my world without this palette in it, but I specifically could not imagine my world without this shade here in it. Like, I know that it doesn't look like much, but this shadow on an eye look looks backlit. It is so pretty. So I couldn't imagine my world without that in it. I mean, look at it. But then I had it up close to you and it looked like absolutely nothing. But then I pull it, it's like lit up. It's like neon lights. I have to have that in my collection. So, I mean, I guess I could buy that separately. But why? When I have the whole palette. And it's such a beautiful palette. So I had to bring this one in as the palette that I would keep. And now I've got that eyeshadow everywhere. From Unearthly, Big Dreamer. Now, I went back and forth with this one because I really like Lore also from them, but I just truly am a purple pink kind of girl. And this palette does, you know, pay homage to like a neutral color story, so you can get an everyday look to it also, but like the purples and pinks and even the blues and grays in this are just such beautiful blues and grays and purples and pinks. Like, they lean a little bit more on the cool side. There's not a whole lot of like umphiness to them, but with the pigmentation, that in and of itself brings that umphiness. Like, I love this palette and love Unearthly. Honestly, I fell in love with Unearthly last year. I'm so glad that I have them in my collection and would not have it any other way. But this is the one that I would choose to keep from my collection from them if I could only choose one. From Odens, the one that I would choose to keep out of the 5 that I have from Odens would have to be this one. And this is the Odens collaboration with Makeup Just for Fun. This is the Flora Story palette. This was in the collaborations with, what was the overall, like, collab on this? I cannot remember, but Lauren May Beauty had a palette, and Batty Bean had a palette, and Makeup Just for Fun had a palette. And this one was like my #1 palette of the year it came out, because it's just pretty. It's easy to use. Again, I feel like it is a color lover's neutral eyeshadow palette. Maybe even a neutral lover's colorful eyeshadow palette. The shimmers are beautiful. The only one that I think that kind of feels like a it doesn't belong here moment is this green. But I also, because it's a little bit more tealy green than the sages in here, but I also think it's just such a beautiful palette, and it's beautiful within this palette. I don't know what they would put in its place. I love that there's not really another color story like this in the palettes that I have chosen. Yeah, there's a lot of greens and there's a lot of purples, but there's not really like these tones of greens and purples. And I wouldn't want like a big 15 pan eyeshadow palette in these colors, because I don't know that you could make it make sense with 15 to 20 eyeshadow palettes. I mean, Sydney Grace tried with Emil's Memory, as well as Natasha Denona with the Retro Glam, and I think that this one just makes more sense because it's got the purples in it that are the way that they are, and because it doesn't go warm, cool, right? It is truly just a cool tone, sagey green, purpley eyeshadow palette. It is truly a gem from the Odens collection of palettes. From Danessa Myrix, it would have to be this palette for many, many reasons. I mean, ultimately, there is the most, like, you're getting the most out of this palette. You're getting 18 shades of multi-chromes and beautiful eyeshadows in this, but also just the pure like situation of the palette, right? The fact that you can pull it all apart, that you can pull every pan out, that you can create your own, that she has since come out with multiple other like 6 pans that you can put in here or stack on top of each other and like keep in this Freedom palette system. Like, this would have to be the one that I kept for multiple reasons, in addition to the reason that it's just truly a beautiful eyeshadow palette. And it would be the only eyeshadow palette that I have in this collection that is truly full of all those multi-chromes like those are. Yes, I think that there are multi-chromes in, like, say, some of the Unearthly palettes, and there are multi-chromes in, say, the Cosmic Brushes palettes, but I don't think the level of multi-chromes that this has in it is in existence in any of the palettes that I've brought in so far. From Sydney Grace, I do think it would have to be the Tarny Marvels. Mostly, let's just be honest, because of the nostalgia around this palette. This is the palette that was created by Mel Thompson, who was a breath of fresh air in this beauty community and is no longer with us. And this is what that palette looks like. Again, really beautiful with some neutral colors in there. It's got some beautiful shimmers in here. It's got, you know, really, it's a really beautiful matte and shimmer formula because it is the Sydney Grace formula. They're all new shades to the Sydney Grace line, except for this one here, which is Scarab, and it's kind of a multi-chrome, like green, brown, red multi-chrome. They're all new shades, or were new at the time of making this, and the nostalgia behind it is honestly the biggest reason why I would keep this one in my collection. I just don't feel like I have a giant Sydney Grace eyeshadow palette collection. I have 3, but of those 3, like, I can't say that there's one that I really, really love or really, really don't love, right? So this one would be the one that I would keep, but purely for the nostalgia reasons. From my Glam Light collection, it would have to be my Chucky Crazy in Love palette. This was a favorite for me last year. Ranking right up there with Pretty Grunge and Natasha Denona Xenon, and Glamlight has a really beautiful formula. I love that this leans more reds than purples, even though it does have some purples in it too. I think that it really hits the whole gamut of like gore color story, right? Grungy color story, if you will. It's got some really beautiful, surprising shimmers in it that I didn't think I was going to like, that I did. I feel like if I wanted a great, impactful, dark and smoky eye look, this is my perfect palette for that without it being black. From my Lime Crime collection of palettes, I only have 3 from Lime Crime, so I'm just right at the cusp there, but I did decide that the Venus Immortalis would be the one that I kept. Again, I feel like it is grungy and beautiful. It's kind of this black gray color story without being solely black and gray. I also really like this because this glows in the dark, and I mean that in and of itself makes me want to keep it, because why not? I'm such a child. Also, the shimmers in this palette are really, really pretty. This silver is like cyborg silver. It's like molten metal on your eyes. This white shimmer is kind of like just shimmery while not being shimmery, and matte while not being matte. It's almost like a glitter infused matte, which I hate so much, but that one is actually really pretty and pretty impactful, honestly, and I think it's because it's got a little bit of that shimmeriness to it. This one was an unexpected favorite for me. It's just kind of a, I mean, it's just kind of a boring color, but I really loved it all over the lid with like this color tapped into the outer corner. Truly a beautiful eyeshadow palette, and a really easy 8-pan eyeshadow palette to use. I don't love that it's so bulky, but all of the Lime Crime palettes that I have are that bulky, so it wasn't like losing out because it was that bulky. And then the last palette that I have to go over is from Morphe, and I used to have several palettes from Morphe, but I've dwindled it down to, I think, 5 palettes from Morphe now, maybe 6. And the one that I would keep would be this one, which is the Morphe Boss Mood. I just love the palette, the variety from this palette, the reds, the deep purples, the maroons, the greens in this palette. Like all of my favorite colors to wear on my eyes are in this palette, and therefore I could pull from this palette any day of the week and know that I could pull something beautiful out of it. That said, I don't love the Morphe formula, but the 5 Morphe eyeshadow palettes that I do have, I do truly enjoy using. There is also the fact that this just really has a nostalgic piece for me, because this was a gift from one of the store managers that I was training when I was an SMT for Starbucks. And I don't think that she was my first store manager that I was training through the SMT program, but she was the first that gave me a gift. And it was right around the same time that I had started my YouTube channel, or there closely after. And like, it was like really the first friend gift that I had ever received in terms of my beauty products. So there's that nostalgia piece to it as well. So that said, that is the 24 eyeshadow palettes that would be in my collection if today I had to lose everything but got to pick one palette from every single brand that I have in my collection of 3 or more palettes. So let me know what your thoughts and opinions are. I would be interested to hear from you. Which palettes in your collection would be the same if you had to choose? Do we have some of the same brands that would exist in your version of this video? I'd like to hear which palette would be your favorite from those brands, and what your thoughts are on some of the palettes that I put in here that maybe you disagree with. Because some of them were really hard for me. Like Lime Crime, I don't really have a favorite or at least favorite from Lime Crime. They're just kind of a brand that's in my collection. Not because I love them one way or another. I picked this palette because it glows in the dark. I mean, how cool is that? Also, I don't have much from Odens. I don't have much from, Sydney Grace. So there's a lot that I'm probably missing out on in terms of those collections, but these are mine. These are what I got for you. So let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section. I would sure be interested to hear from you. If you're interested in seeing any of the reviews that I have on these palettes, please seek out that palette playlist down in my description box. It is my palette roulette palette reviews playlist that's there. I do have a review on every single one of these palettes on that playlist. And I mean, drop me some information in those videos, comment sections on how you feel about those palettes. That said, you guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best that you can. I hope that you are all loving each other, being kind humans, and living your best life. And until next time, bye, friends.